Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Werewolf of London, starring Henry Hall, Warner Oland, Valerie Hobson, Lester Matthews, Lawrence Grant, Spring Byington, forgive me if I said that wrong, Clark Williams, J.M. Kerrigan, Charlotte Granville, Ethel Griffiths, Zeffie Tilbury, and Jean Bartlett, directed by Stuart Walker. Now, I've seen only the 2009 Wolfman movie, but I'm starting with with this movie as well as She-Wolf of London, and then I'll get to the original 1940s Wolfman movie, and the 2009, which is the only one I've seen of this retrospective series. Surprise. And leading up to the new 2025 movie from the director of The Invisible Man. I'm excited for this one, because after The Invisible Man, this one, it might be pretty good. We'll see, because I gave The Invisible Man quite a good rating. I still need to go back to those originals, because I've reviewed that 2020 movie before. But as for the Wolfman, I've never heard of these two, but I have heard of the Wolfman from 1940s, and I'll talk about that when I get there. Let's get into this movie. We go through opening credits, and we get some archaeologists arguing with one another until someone comes in with a camel saying, "You'll be foolish to look for the thing they're looking for," as the archaeologists have been looking for this thing for 6 months. As they hear a werewolf and one of the archaeologists believes he heard a werewolf howling, whom I think is the main character, while in the middle of nowhere, and I was confused as in what in the world was going on in this opener. As a werewolf approaches, I think the main character, and attacks him and bites him, and it looked half man, and at some point later in the movie, he'll turn into a werewolf, and the acting in this comes off like any typical 1930s horror film, and I wasn't appreciating how confused I was for this opener. Dr. Wilfred Glendon, played by Henry Hall, has some guests while in his laboratory. His wife Lisa tells him guests are here, while one of them sees the Venus flytrap eating a fly. As Willifred meets Paul Ames, as he comes off like the character from the comic books of the Hulk, named Talbot, who was in that Ang Lee film that I reviewed a while ago, as he comes off like a brute to the main character while in love with Lisa, which happens to be Willifred, while a student of Willifred's named Dr. Yogami, I don't know if I'm saying that wrong, please forgive me, chats with Willifred about a werewolf disease being spread around the world, and I do not like nor care for the characters, as I don't care what is going to happen to them whatsoever, and it confuses me to wonder, what is this movie about? Willifred tests one of his plants, as he's a plant doctor, and what does this have to do with a horror film about a man becoming a werewolf, as it might get there later on, but for a movie that is as short as 75 minutes, I wish it got there quicker than it did, as I was losing patience with the film, as I'm about 25 minutes into the movie, and I have 50 more minutes to go, as we see Willifred have some marks on him, like he might have been infected by a werewolf, as that could have been him in the beginning of the movie. But again, I was really confused by the movie for some reason at all, as it makes absolutely no sense. While we get a book reading about a man becoming a werewolf if bitten by one, as the writing as well as the dialogue is badly written, as this doesn't feel as corny as The Mummy nor Dracula, in my opinion, and another couple of films I've reviewed before this. Willifred scares his poor kitty cat like he's becoming a werewolf, and thank God it got there, as I'm 32 minutes into the movie, and the makeup was fine, as that was how monster movies were made back in the day, with some makeup. And we move on to a horrible singer singing some kind of opera, and a couple of people hear a werewolf howl, and the woman was scared and goes to bed fainting because she is frightened by the noise of the werewolf, and goes up to the woman's bedroom and scares the living hell out of her, and she's scared of the werewolf out of the house. And the scream in that scene was pretty bad. Well, I just can't take this movie seriously, as the werewolf kills people at night until it turns back into a human. And this movie is not scary to me at all. People wonder, what is this Werewolf of London? As some people in the government talk about it, as Paul says he loves Lisa. And at this point, I don't care whether she gets together with Paul or Willifred. And I should, but the truth is, I don't. And I don't know what the hell is going on. And I just don't care, as I was bored at this point. People are hearing the werewolf, and is this my very view filled with cheaters? Is this movie filled with cheaters and bad people? Like a man letting out a couple of wolves, for example, as the werewolf being portrayed by Willifred goes after his cheating wife, while who's having an affair with Paul, while one of the ladies has an alcoholic beverage, while the other sees the werewolf, aka Willifred, at the doorknob as he's making noises. And the next day comes, and still on the newspaper like bananas, meaning craziness. I can't follow this movie anymore, as I was getting confused on why it exists, as it does. A couple of men bump into a doggy and pets it and looks for the werewolf, while Paul confesses he's in love with Lisa, while Willifred is still the werewolf. And I'm thinking, did they used to be lovers as they run out of the into the house of Willifred, and as he is a werewolf attacking Lisa, and he recognizes Lisa and knocks her out as Paul attacks him, while the newspapers hears of another werewolf murder. It would get one phone call after another, and my eyes are hurting by this movie at this point, while Dr. Yogami has a fight with Willifred, and that I don't care about, as he turns into a werewolf and goes after Lisa and after another lady whom I never got her name, sadly, and I don't care. While the werewolf goes after Paul, and the colonel comes on the way to go after the werewolf as he gets shot and dies. And this is like the story of the Hulk. And this climax makes no sense, as this was before the Hulk was ever invented in the 1960s. But at the end of the day, I just don't care. How much do I not care? Let's get to the rating and find out. I'll give this movie a 3.8 out of 10. From the first scene to the last, I didn't appreciate how confused I was for half the movie. While the acting felt typical 1930s horror film, I don't like the characters, as I don't care what happens to them by the end of the day, as it confuses me. What is this movie about? As I was getting annoyed by how confusing the movie was. I asked myself while viewing the film a second time, what does this movie have to do with a horror film about a man turning into a werewolf? As later on, it might get there, but at 75 minutes, I wish it got there much quicker than it did, as I wasn't patient with the movie at its time it was taking, and it was making absolutely no sense. The writing of the dialogue is badly written, as this doesn't feel as corny as The Mummy nor Dracula, in my opinion. And despite I thought the makeup was fine, but unfortunately it's not enough for me to recommend this to anybody, so this is a non-recommendation for this movie, as this didn't make me laugh nor scared me to death, as this is a Universal Picture monster movie that has nothing to do with the Wolfman, that made me very sad. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with She-Wolf of London. And until then,